What attracted you to Kramer, and how did your association with them come about?
Well, I got in this lawsuit, you know, and no.
Eddie Van Halen had a wild kind of talent, the kind that felt like a blessing and a curse at the same time. He could touch a guitar and make it cry, scream, or sing like nothing anyone had ever heard before. But inside his head, there was always noise, always pressure, always something pushing him toward dark choices. People love to talk about Eddie's genius, but they also whisper about his dark side. It almost felt like his magic on the strings came hand in hand with inner chaos. For years, he lived in a brutal loop, explosive creativity followed by heavy partying and substance use that took a serious toll. The real question is, how did this cycle even begin? To understand that, you have to go back to the very start. And no, the Van in Eddie Van Halen's name wasn't just there to sound cool. He was born in the Netherlands, where van is as common as windmills and wooden shoes. Eddie came into the world on January 26, 1955, in Amsterdam, to a Dutch musician father and an Indo mother. Music was already in his blood from day one. Not long after he was born, the family moved to a small town called Nijmegen, but life there was rough. Eddie and his brother Alex had mixed heritage, and other kids treated them badly because of it. They were called cruel names and made to feel like they didn't belong. It was painful and isolating. Their parents saw the damage and knew something had to change. So they made a bold move. They packed everything up and headed to America, chasing a fresh start and a better future. In 1962, the Van Halen family landed in Pasadena, California, where they had some relatives. But the dream didn't come easy. Eddie's parents didn't speak English, so they had to take low-paying jobs just to survive. His mother worked as a maid and his father became a janitor. Money was tight, so tight that they shared a small home with two other families. America was supposed to mean opportunity, but at first it just meant struggle. School made things even harder. Eddie and Alex showed up barely speaking English, and that made them easy targets. Classmates didn't show kindness. They mocked them, tore up Eddie's homework, and even humiliated him during recess. It was cruel and unfair. The family had crossed an ocean hoping for peace, but the bullying followed them. Eddie needed an escape, something that felt safe, something that gave him power instead of pain. That escape became music. Both brothers started piano lessons around age 6. But Eddie didn't learn music the traditional way. He couldn't even read sheet music at first. Instead, he would sit and watch other musicians play Mozart and Bach at recitals. He studied their hands, their timing, their rhythm. Then he'd go home and play the same pieces just by memory. That wasn't normal. That was raw genius. Even as a kid, he had something different, something electric inside him. When he was about 10 years old, Eddie entered the Long Beach City College piano competition and took first place. His father was beyond proud. He saw a future filled with concert halls and classical fame for his son. In his mind, Eddie would become a respected classical pianist. But Eddie had other plans bubbling inside him. His heroes weren't just Mozart and Bach. He was drawn to something louder, something bolder. Bands like the Beatles and the Dave Clark Five lit a fire in him. That sound had edge, attitude, and swagger. Alex felt it too. To their father's disappointment, both brothers were leaning toward rock instead of classical music. The shift had started and there was no turning back. When Alex made a sudden move and bought a guitar, Eddie responded by grabbing a drum kit. It looked like they had their roles figured out, until everything flipped. One day, Alex sat down at Eddie's drums just to mess around. Eddie was nearby, not expecting much. But then Alex started playing the famous drum solo from the Surfaris song Wipe Out, and he nailed it. The rhythm was tight, loud, and confident. Eddie stood there listening and had a life-changing realization. Even though the drums were technically his, Alex had real power behind that kit.
For paraplegics. No, I'm joking. Oh, all right, cut that out.
So Eddie made a bold decision. He handed the drums over to his brother and picked up an electric guitar instead. Just like that, the future sound of rock history started taking shape. Now that they knew who was playing what, they had to figure out who they were playing for. Eddie practiced nonstop, day and night, fingers burning on the strings. He wanted more than just bedroom jams. So they pulled together 3 other boys and formed a band called the Broken Combs. Eddie was only in the 4th grade at the time, so huge venues were obviously not happening. Instead, they played at Hamilton Elementary School in Pasadena. It wasn't a stadium packed with screaming fans, but it was enough. That small stage lit a fire in Eddie. He didn't just want to play music. He needed to become a professional musician. Eddie's father understood that hunger. After all, he was a musician himself, but his mother felt very different. She believed her husband should leave music behind and focus on stable work. So when she saw Eddie diving deeper into music, she tried to shut it down. At one point, she even locked his guitar away to stop him from practicing. She hoped it was just a phase, but she didn't realize something else was holding Eddie back. Fear. He desperately wanted to perform, yet he struggled with intense stage fright. Even with that fear, Eddie kept pushing himself to perform whenever he could. The nerves were overwhelming. His hands would shake, his heart would race. So he went to his father for advice, hoping for guidance. His dad gave him a shocking solution. He handed him a cigarette and a drink. It seemed like a quick fix. The alcohol calmed his nerves and dulled the anxiety. For a moment it worked, but that moment came with a heavy cost. Eddie started liking that relaxed feeling too much. It wasn't just about stage fright anymore. Drinking slowly became part of his routine. Later in life, he admitted he even showed up to high school classes completely drunk. And when a teacher found out, instead of stepping in with real support, the teacher simply suggested different types of drinks he might enjoy. That lack of guidance made things worse. What began as a coping tool quietly turned into a lifelong struggle that followed him for years. Through all of this, Eddie's father remained a powerful influence, especially since his mother stayed critical of the music path.
A notion of where it's going or where it's headed? Or?
There's no end. I'm serious. I mean, you know, we're dipping into guitar.
In 1972, his father was working what his wife called a real job when a terrible accident happened. He dropped a trailer on his finger. The injury was severe and he lost the finger completely. That ended his ability to play clarinet. Just like that, his dream was taken away. Eddie saw firsthand how fast life could change, how quickly talent could be stolen. Instead of backing away from music, the accident pushed Eddie harder. He became obsessed with mastering his craft. He studied bands like Cream and Led Zeppelin, soaking up every riff and rhythm. By 1972, he and Alex were ready for something bigger. They formed their first serious band and called it Mammoth. But something was missing, a bold, flashy frontman. Van Halen started blowing up fast in the Los Angeles music scene. Clubs were packed, the buzz was growing, and people couldn't stop talking about that wild guitar sound. Then came a huge moment. They landed a gig opening for the British band UFO at the Starwood in West Hollywood. What they didn't know was that someone very important was standing in the crowd that night. Glam rocker and Kiss bassist Gene Simmons was watching them closely. Simmons later said it took only 3 songs for him to realize this band was different. He saw the energy, the swagger, and especially Eddie's explosive guitar work. He didn't wait around. Simmons went backstage and stood there until the band finished their set. When the guys walked off stage, sweaty and pumped, they saw a rock legend waiting for them. Simmons was already a massive star with Kiss, and now he wanted to know what Van Halen's plans were for the future. One of the band members proudly mentioned that a yogurt company was thinking about investing in them. Simmons' face dropped instantly. He thought that was a terrible move for a rock band trying to build a serious image. But he wasn't there to criticize. He was there with a real offer. Simmons wanted to sign Van Halen to his own record company. He even drafted up a contract and got the band to sign it. It felt like the big break they had been chasing. Then everything collapsed just as fast. When the other members of KISS found out about Simmons' plan, they pushed back hard. Simmons didn't want tension inside his own band, so he made a brutal decision. He tore up the contract. Just like that, the deal vanished. And to make it worse, the yogurt company backed out too. In a matter of days, Van Halen lost both opportunities. It was a crushing setback. Instead of quitting, they doubled down. The band focused on sharpening their sound and building a stronger image. Their hard work paid off when Warner Records finally noticed them and offered a recording contract. In 1978, their debut album dropped, simply titled Van Halen. The record exploded almost instantly. It climbed to number 19 on the Billboard pop charts and made serious noise across the country. Suddenly, everyone knew the name Van Halen. The first thing Eddie and Alex did after tasting success was deeply personal. They paid off a huge family debt. They had always appreciated their father for standing by them when others doubted their path. Now that they had real money, they showed that gratitude in a big way. They bought him a boat. After years of hard work and sacrifice, their father could finally relax and enjoy life on the water. It was a powerful, full-circle moment. But fame brought more than money. It also brought attention, especially romantic attention. With massive success came access to high-profile relationships. Around that time, one of the most sought-after stars on television was Valerie Bertinelli from One Day at a Time. Eddie probably didn't think he had a shot with a major TV actress, but fate had other plans. Publicly, Bertinelli described herself as similar to her wholesome TV character, but she had a bold side that surprised people. One look at Eddie on an album cover was enough to catch her interest, and she didn't sit back and wait. In 1980, she went to one of his concerts and marched backstage with confidence. She told the promoter straight up that she had a crush on Eddie Van Halen. Word traveled quickly. Soon, Bertinelli was waiting in a private room to meet him. There was just one awkward twist. Eddie had no idea who she really was. He only knew she was some kind of television star, but that was it. When he walked in to meet her, he was nervous, and surprisingly, so was she. Despite the tension, they connected instantly. The chemistry was real, and a serious romance took off. From the outside, the marriage between Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli looked like a dream, a beloved television star and the explosive guitar hero of one of America's biggest rock bands. It felt like Hollywood magic. But behind the cameras and flashing lights, things were far more complicated. Eddie didn't just love Valerie. He had other obsessions pulling at him every single night. When Valerie joined him on tour, he often placed her in a separate bedroom. It wasn't always about chasing other women. Eddie wanted privacy for his other habits. While Valerie slept in the next room, Eddie stayed up with his guitar, bottles, and lines laid out beside him. Music, alcohol, and substances became a trio he couldn't seem to live without. After long nights like that, instead of crawling into bed with his wife, he would sometimes pass out next to the band's manager, Noel Monk, who would stay close to make sure things didn't spiral further. It was chaotic, messy, and far from the fairy tale people imagined. When Valerie wasn't on tour, though, the story shifted. If she was physically around, Eddie could act like a devoted husband. But when she was away, temptation was everywhere. The rock scene in those days was wild. Some people described the backstage atmosphere as non-stop excess. Groupies surrounded the band, and boundaries blurred quickly. It was reckless behavior that came with serious consequences. All that partying didn't come without a cost. Frequent doctor visits became part of the routine. The band needed antibiotics for health issues they picked up during their chaotic lifestyle. Doctors also prescribed medications like codeine and Percodan, which only added fuel to the fire. What started as fun slowly turned into dependency. The party never seemed to stop. It just moved from city to city. Cars were another obsession. Eddie and his bandmates loved fast, expensive machines, especially sleek Italian models. These weren't just cars, they were status symbols. They pushed those vehicles to dangerous speeds, sometimes hitting nearly 240 kilometers per hour on Los Angeles roads. It was thrilling and reckless at the same time. Money was flowing, fame was growing, and it felt like nothing could touch them. But trouble eventually knocked on the door. An unidentified woman filed a paternity suit against Eddie, claiming he was the father of her child. The news exploded like a bomb. At first, it looked like a full-blown scandal. Eddie tried to recall the situation and insisted that whatever happened between them could not have led to a pregnancy. He believed he had taken precautions. Still, there was no avoiding the next steps. He had to take a paternity test, and he had to tell Valerie.
Him, I wouldn't be here, put it that way.
That's right. More ways than one.
Sometimes I feel like the best part of me ran down his leg.
The test results showed that Eddie was not the father. Legally, he was cleared, but emotionally, the damage was done. Valerie now had to confront the painful truth that her husband had been unfaithful. It didn't matter that the child wasn't his. The betrayal still cut deep. She faced a brutal choice: walk away from the chaos or stand beside him and hope things would change. She chose to stay. They set their wedding date for April 1981. The ceremony itself went smoothly. Smiles, cameras, applause, everything looked perfect on the surface. But when it was time for the reception, guests realized something strange. The bride and groom were missing. After searching everywhere, manager Noel Monk finally found them locked inside a bathroom. When they didn't respond, he forced the door open. Inside was a heartbreaking scene. Valerie, still wearing her beautiful white gown, was holding Eddie's hair back as he vomited into the toilet on their wedding night. The glamour faded in an instant. Valerie understood right then that this marriage would not be simple. She had signed up for love, but she was also signing up for chaos. Sadly, marriage didn't slow Eddie down. His intense lifestyle continued, and over time it began affecting Valerie too. She later shared that she struggled with substance use as well. According to her, Eddie preferred her to stay very thin, and the unhealthy habits became part of maintaining that image. It was a painful cycle feeding off pressure, insecurity, and fame. The brighter Eddie's star burned, the harder he partied. At first, Eddie thought the call was a joke. The man on the other end claimed to be legendary music producer Quincy Jones, but Eddie wasn't buying it. Quincy Jones was a giant in the industry. Why would he be calling him? But as the conversation went on, it became clear. This was real, and the opportunity being offered was massive. Pete Townshend from The Who had actually recommended Eddie for a special project. And not just any project. Michael Jackson, already rising as the king of pop, wanted to add a hard rock edge to a new song on his upcoming album. He needed a real rock guitarist, someone with bite, speed, and attitude. The song was called Beat It, and Eddie Van Halen was being asked to deliver the solo. Eddie jumped in fast. He didn't just record a quick riff and leave. He started reshaping parts of the track, adjusting sections, and adding his own fire to the middle of the song. Before he even realized it, he had made serious changes to a track written by Michael Jackson himself. That was a bold move. When it was time to play the updated version for Jackson, Eddie felt nervous. This was Michael Jackson. What if he hated the changes? Instead, Jackson loved it. Not only was he excited about the solo, he was genuinely touched that Eddie cared enough to elevate the song instead of just doing the minimum. Eddie later said that working with Michael Jackson became one of his favorite memories in his entire career. It was creative, electric, and unforgettable. But here's the shocking part. Eddie refused to take payment for the session. He was so happy just to be part of it that he told them he didn't want the money. It sounded generous, it sounded noble, but financially, it was a huge mistake. Beat It shot to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 3 weeks. It sold over 11 million copies worldwide and became one of the best-selling singles ever. And to make it sting even more, the album Thriller knocked Van Halen's own album from the #1 spot down to #2. The upside, even more fame. The downside? That fame only pushed Eddie deeper into excess. Being part of a Michael Jackson hit introduced him to an even wider audience. Concert venues got bigger, crowds got louder, the shows became more extreme. Fans thought Eddie had endless energy on stage, but the truth wasn't so clean. If you had peeked inside his on-stage amplifier cabinet, you might have seen lines of white powder laid out and waiting. That's where some of that energy was coming from. The pressure to perform, to stay on top, to outdo every last show. It fed into habits that were already spiraling. And it started showing. At one concert, just before going on stage, an aide noticed something strange. Eddie's face and chest were covered in marks. It turned out he had been drawing on himself with a sharp pen while under the influence. The aide rushed to clean him up before the curtain went up. The show continued, but it was clear something wasn't right. The chaos didn't stop with substances. His spending was just as reckless. Van Halen was one of the biggest bands in America, selling out arenas, dominating charts. But somehow, the members weren't seeing the money they expected. The deal they had signed with Warner Brothers was terrible. Manager Noel Monk finally stepped in and confronted the label. He pushed hard in negotiations and managed to secure a much better contract. Suddenly, the band was earning serious cash. But even that didn't solve the problem. Money flew out as fast as it came in. Hotel rooms were destroyed. One limo was completely trashed. The non-stop partying, repairs, fines, and substance habits drained huge amounts of cash. Somehow, despite all the success, they were spending more than they earned. It was wild and unsustainable. To fans, everything looked perfect. The music was powerful. The shows were explosive. The band seemed unstoppable. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming, especially between Eddie and lead singer David Lee Roth. Their personalities clashed hard. Creative differences turned into shouting matches. Tension built up show after show. During one heated argument, things boiled over. Eddie lost his temper and threw a glass bowl filled with guacamole at Roth's head. That wasn't just rock star drama. That was serious frustration exploding in real time. The partnership that had built the band's identity was starting to fracture. Eddie Van Halen finally hit a breaking point. The tension with David Lee Roth had gotten so bad that he started looking for an escape plan. His solution? Leave his own band. Eddie seriously considered quitting Van Halen and jumping over to Kiss. He was still on good terms with Gene Simmons, so he reached out with the idea. At the time, Ace Frehley was on his way out of Kiss, which meant there was an open spot for a lead guitarist. On paper, it looked perfect. But Simmons knew the full story. As talented as Eddie was, he also came with chaos, ego clashes, and heavy personal struggles. Simmons made a tough call and told Eddie no. That rejection hit hard. With nowhere else to go, Eddie returned to the band he was frustrated with. The egos inside Van Halen were constantly battling for control. Every day felt like a competition, and it didn't help that the partying never slowed down. They were grown men still living like reckless teenagers. In 1985, everything changed. The original version of Van Halen came to an abrupt end. The split was official. But even worse news was waiting around the corner for Eddie. Years earlier, it was his father who had introduced him to alcohol as a way to calm stage fright. What started as a small suggestion slowly grew into a lifelong dependency. In 1986, Eddie's father passed away, and alcohol played a role in his declining health. The loss hit Eddie hard. It forced him to look at his own habits. About a year later, Eddie told Rolling Stone magazine that he was done drinking forever. He sounded serious. He sounded determined. But addiction isn't that simple. Sadly, his sobriety didn't last. The cycle he had been stuck in for decades kept pulling him back. Through all the chaos, one surprising thing had remained steady for a long time: his marriage to Valerie Bertinelli. Despite the scandals, fights, and substance struggles, they stayed together and even welcomed a son. They named him Wolfgang, inspired by Mozart. It was a powerful nod to Eddie's classical roots and the music that shaped him early on. But even that bond couldn't survive forever. Years of pressure, addiction, and heartbreak took their toll. Eddie and Valerie separated in 2001 and finalized their divorce in 2005. It was the end of a long chapter filled with love, pain, and public attention. Eventually, Eddie realized he couldn't keep living the same way. His drinking had gone too far. Determined to fight back, he checked himself into rehab. At the exact same time, Van Halen was being honored by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. While the band received one of music's highest honors, Eddie was in treatment, focusing on his health instead of standing on stage. That moment said everything about the battle he was facing. In the end, it wasn't the drama, the fights, or even the addiction that took him. Eddie Van Halen passed away on October 6, 2020, after battling cancer. He was 65 years old and surrounded by loved ones. The world lost one of the greatest guitar players to ever touch an instrument. His influence changed rock music forever, and his sound still echoes through generations of musicians. And if you want to hear that legacy live on, you can. His son Wolfgang Van Halen created his own band and named it Mammoth WVH, a tribute to Eddie's early group. The music continues, and the spirit is still alive. That brings us to the end of this story on Eddie Van Halen. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into music legends. Drop your thoughts below. What's your favorite Van Halen song? See you in the next video.